Welcome to another episode of T-Chat. My name is Asa S. I use they, them pronouns, and I am an outreach specialist with Mozaic. Mozaic is a drop-in space that is open Monday through Friday, and we have resources to gender-affirming care and a clothing closet as well. We are joined today and have the pleasure of sitting down today with Fyre Storm, a local drag artist, and Mr. Gay Illinois. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. How are you doing today?
Good. The weather finally changed and it's not dreary and raining outside, which is nice, which is, of course, why I wore a long sleeve crop top and pants.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So tell me a bit about yourself. What do you do outside of drag?
So before I got into drag, most of my free time, I loved going out for karaoke. I was in choir when I was younger, so like any opportunity to sing is nice. I'm super active, so I love to like hike or play sports. I love my little kickball team. We just kind of message each other whenever the weather is nice, and we're like, do we all want to meet up? And somebody just like grabs a ball. But a lot of at-home stuff I like to do is mostly crafting.
Crafting, that's fun. And tell me, how long have you been a nail tech and wax specialist?
So I've been a licensed cosmetologist for a decade now.
Wow. Congrats.
I got hair first, and then I realized that standing for 4 to 6 hours was just like not great.
A lot, yeah.
And I switched to doing waxing, specifically because that is like an uncomfortable procedure to get done. And I have really good bedside manner. And it was something I was good at. And so I kept up with that. But the nails is where I thrive because I love to like hand paint designs. If you can think of it, I can put it on a nail.
That's amazing. It must take a lot of detail work too.
Yeah, I can spend
Steady
anywhere
hand.
from 2 to 4 hours on one set of nails.
Oh, yeah.
But they will be the most elaborate thing you've ever seen.
Awesome. Do you see a lot of queer clients?
I actually do. I don't have a lot of skin clients right now, but actually all of my waxing clients are all queer. And like a lot of them specifically are under the trans umbrella because people don't like to have to book a wax, and people book like men's waxes and women's waxes.
Right.
And they are going to book the wax that accommodates them, but a wax specialist might not be used to that, especially if they're not queer.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that that is a safe space for them.
Yeah, especially you being trans too. You understand things, you kind of know where they're coming from and can make a very safe space for them.
Yes, and the salon I work at is very queer friendly, and most of our staff is queer, so we mostly get an influx of queer people.
Nice. That's really good. How do you incorporate your identity into the work that you do at the salon?
Explain that question a little more to me.
Yeah. So how do you bring in your identity into things, and, how do you let that side of yourself show in what you do as a profession?
Okay, so I have always been a very like creative type, and like I have only been out for a little bit as long as I've even been out transition wise, and so I've incorporated a lot of like the behaviors that I have maybe as a performer in my nails. I like to create an experience. So like it's very fun to like tell stories and ask people about themselves, and like even give people things to think about. I love having like random facts of the day. I think my favorite one is probably the fact that like in the Philippines, they have like a delicacy, and it's like deformed like bird egg, and that's something that they like to eat. Like it's very known there. And somebody was like, why do you know that? I was like, I literally watched the Natural History Channel when I was like 8, and that was the one thing that stuck with me. And then I've fixated on it for like 20 years.
Yeah. No, I can feel hyperfixation for sure. So how did you first become interested in drag performance?
So I had never been to like a really good Pride. When I was 18, I went to a Cleveland Pride, and there were so many religious groups that it was like not a good time. And it was small.
Yeah.
Like it was tiny.
Yeah.
And so I came down here, went to my first one at like Axis, and we were only in the outside part. But then there was like a drag king walking around, and I had never heard of drag kings before ever. I was like, that's a real thing. And I went up to this person. I was like, so you are a gentleman, but I've never seen this. And it was Riley Poppy Seed, which is also an amazing local drag king. If you do not know them and you're in the queer community, you're under a rock. I don't know.
Yeah,
They're
Riley really shows out.
amazing.
Yeah.
And they told me they were a drag king, and it made me think. And like 3 months later, I went to an open stage with like bronzer and like a hoodie. And I did some like douchey Justin Bieber numbers. That's the drag king starter pack is like a binder, a sock that pretends to be a dick, and we all do a boy band number.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
And then I really liked being on stage for that. And then months later, I didn't do another open stage for like 3 months because I went back and I was like hyperfixation. I was like, I studied, learned makeup, figured out what costumes I wanted to, came back, and like it has just skyrocketed from there.
Right. So how long ago did you get started?
The first time I ever did any sort of drag stage thing was in 2019.
Okay, yeah.
And then I really didn't actually start as Fyre Storm until December of 2020. So it's been about 3.5 years now.
Nice. What inspired your drag persona and how did you develop it?
So I originally started specifically in all drag. I love like emo, metal, like rock stuff. And so I basically, my first number I ever did, I looked like if Vanilla Ice and Marilyn Manson had a baby, which is a whole vibe. I had like bleach blonde hair and then like colored contacts, and I did Sweet Dreams, the Marilyn Manson version.
Oh,
I was
wow.
creepy.
That's amazing.
And I like inspired a lot of my drag with intensity.
Yeah.
But I play around now, which is why I kind of like the name is intense, but it's all encompassing.
Right.
I didn't need like 50 different personas. So
Yeah. So can you share an experience you're especially proud of in drag?
Oh, my proudest one was, okay, I'm going to have to do two.
Okay.
Because they're different ones. So
Yeah.
on an emotional level, last year I did a Pride in Bellefontaine, Ohio. And they had gotten their first gay bar like, I think 2 or 3 years ago now. And that's a
Right.
huge deal because Bellefontaine is very much like what I call a time bubble of like things that have never changed.
Yeah.
And I have my number one fan is adorable little girl, and she had always come to all of my shows, and the parents always brought her. And so they brought her to the show this past year. I made sure to take a picture with all of our costumes. But then when I was done, she came and she's like holding my hands. She's like, I come to these shows specifically for you. You're my favorite. And then mom's crying in the background. I don't know what's going on. And it was about what we were talking about. And she was like, you were the reason I was able to come out as trans to my parents and my family. And they're so supportive. And I was like, oh my gosh.
So heartwarming.
That happened on June 3rd. I said the rest of this Pride Month don't even matter at this point. I don't know what could top this.
Peaked, yeah.
And I was just like calling my partner at the time, just like crying. And I couldn't get words out. So he thinks something bad happened. He's like, I'm driving to Bellefontaine. I think he thought I got hate crimed. And I was like, no.
No, I'm crying good.
It's good. And it was, and that's still so special to me. And I'll be going back to Bellefontaine again this year because they reached out and they were like, so you have to come back. I said, I will always come back there. That's one of my favorite spots. But my second favorite was within that same month. I had the great fortune and opportunity to be the first and currently only drag king to ever perform inside of Electric Forest.
Amazing.
It was a surreal experience.
Yeah.
It was like this really nice octagon stage, and like a lot of big artists perform on these stages.
Yeah.
So to share that same space, and there was hundreds of people and photographers and videos, and I've always like wanted to go to that festival, and I had gone the year prior, and so to not only get to go, but to get paid to go and to perform, it was so magical. And fingers crossed, I might also get to perform again this year. So
Yeah, that would be amazing. Yeah. So how do you prepare for a drag performance, both mentally and physically?
So the mental jump work I go through a lot of the times, like on days that I work, which is why now I've dedicated, like, I don't work my day job on the same days I do shows if I can help it. But a lot of the times I just like listening to my music over and over again. And what I like to do is I like to listen to just clips of my numbers so that I can create specific like choreo or movement or motions for those things. But when it comes to like the physicality, I should stretch more. You should always stretch.
Yeah.
but I do a lot of like dancing and like circus theatrics and stuff. But a lot of the times I just kind of try to like lay down and get my body to rest, because I think starting with an anxious body motivates an anxious mind. So I do really try to just slow myself down and like take my actual time.
Yeah, that's smart. How has it been like being a trans person in the drag scene?
It's been interesting. The nice thing about being trans in the like drag community is anybody else who is in that community, you are already family. Like everybody takes care of each other. It's one of those like, oh, you're trans? Great. Are we all friends now? Fantastic. The hard thing that can be as a trans man in the drag king community is some people will think that it is unfair that certain, like, until you are like transitioned to the point where it's very like maybe passing, people will be like, well, you don't have to try as hard now that you look the way you do. And I was like, well, we're working hard in different ways. Like I've put money and access into my body. Right. I've needed to make it look that way. I'm going through the mental scholastics of like being a trans person and then doing drag, and it's an impersonation thing, but it's also a part of us. So sometimes when like a lot of like the dolls, like the drag queens who are just very like passable regularly, and maybe their makeup is shifted, it's not as campy, it doesn't have to be. They've worked hard to be there too.
Right.
So it's can be difficult when people judge you based off the fact that supposedly you have a leg up.
Right.
And it's not.
You're not impersonating the other gender, but still there's a lot of hard work that goes into drag.
Yeah, we're still doing the performance and the makeup, and maybe it's not as much like if you grow facial hair and now you don't have to paint it on. Great. But I mean, there's so much more than those tiny nuances.
Right, exactly. What challenges have you faced then as a drag artist, and how have you overcome them?
I think the biggest thing I've faced is I love to perform, and I, get paid for it, and people look at it as a hobby. And for some people it can be, but when you become good enough, if you were to tell like a RuPaul's Drag Race girl, even the one who's first eliminated, that that's a hobby for her, you wouldn't dare.
Yeah.
And so I don't like that you have to be at a high caliber for it to be a profession. And I'm not saying that it supplements all my income, but I have not survived certain months without also having the opportunity to perform on multiple stages.
Right.
So I've learned that like I raise my rates. I want to get paid what I'm worth. As an artist, you always should. And I do nails, so I already know what I want to get paid.
Right.
And it's just hard because sometimes I don't get booked in my own areas because it's maybe oversaturated, or they've just already picked their people, or when people reach out, they reach out last minute and they're not willing to pay more than the absolute bare minimum. And I just know that if I keep saying yes to those things, then they keep assuming that they can.
Right.
So,
and you want to raise that bar, especially for other trans people.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I'm like, don't let people pay you what you're not worth. Like, let people see that you are worth getting paid that. And if they can't, there are other places that will appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. And going off that, how do you see the role of drag in the LGBT community and in advocacy work?
It's so important. And it's one of the things that they talk about in pageants. And I think, people like date pageants, and pageants are such an old thing, and it's run by old queens. But so much of that built my career, because I started in drag, and 6 months in, I did a national pageant.
Right.
And it really like put me up there for people to see me, but it also let me know that like when people watch you and you have that platform, you can do so much. Like, I love that there's like drag story hours. Yeah. I've done some of those. I love working with kids specifically. Yeah. You can do advocacy for like small career-owned businesses, and like there's just so much you can do with drag that's not just performative. And so it's very, very important for that to still be like something that's important in the community, because it also lets people know that they can express their individuality through performances, and you could inspire the next person to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. I really think it's important to let younger kids especially see that you can flourish as an adult, and you can flourish as your identity, and it can be as loud as it wants to be, and it still can be okay, and it can be great. So are there any drag artists that have influenced your work?
Oh, for sure. So just makeup wise, I like save pictures of like artists that I've really liked their makeup from. So like I've looked at like bigger ones like Landon Siders, smaller maybe to people who don't know outside of Ohio, it's like Jared Jameson and Ryder Slowly, definitely Riley Poppy Seed. They were really great. But I also like to get a lot of inspiration from like queen looks and different things. So like I think that like Eris Gray, they're a performer. They have really good eye looks. Helena Troy, she has just like a stunning face. I like have never seen her painted bad ever. I think she wakes up like that. And of course, because like she's been doing drag for a while, and is just one of those like people that has really captured her look. And that's what I appreciate about a lot of queens, because they have a face specifically. And so taking little pieces and creating new faces is very fun for me.
Yeah. I can imagine the makeup process is really artistic for you and creative.
And I love it because I've been doing makeup artistry for years. And I actually do makeup artistry like as a professional thing for like photo shoot sets and stuff. So like being able to like learn it on me, when I do it on someone else, it's like even easier.
Yeah, I can imagine. How do you balance your personal life with your drag life?
We are now learning that.
Yeah.
I've been on this high swing for 3 years. I mean, last 2 prides, I did probably like 22 shows in June. Damn. And I still work a full-time job.
Yeah.
And I performed in 5 different states and probably like 10 to 12 different cities. And it's been hard because like I work 6 days a week or 5 days a week at my day job. And whenever I'm not doing my day job, I'm doing shows. Right. So by actually increasing my price, I've been taking less shows, but more worthwhile shows, which has given me a little bit more free time. But I would not step in my house because it looks like a drag bar threw up on it. It's not messy. It's just cluttered.
Organized chaos.
Yeah, because I know where everything is.
Right.
But if I try to tell my partner to go find, I'll be like, can you find the shoes that match the one suit? And he's just like digging through things, and I'll just like walk over to like some pile over here and like move a shirt and be like, they were right here.
Of course. How were you looking at all?
Right. And he has this cute little vein that likes to pop out in frustration. And I haven't nicknamed it yet, but I should, because I see him a lot.
Yeah. What advice would you give to someone that's starting their journey on drag?
First, determine what you want out of your drag. Do you want it to just be something you do for fun and enjoyment occasionally? Or do you want to like use it to travel or to perform in multiple things? Do you want to just use it for advocacy? Like finding out what your platform is first will let you determine how much you're going to put into it.
Right.
And then understanding that like you should never get into it for money. I've been very fortunate that I make more money than I put into it, but I also have the background of being able to do costuming and makeup and all these other things as well. So like if you get into it for that reason, know that you're going to have to work very, very hard because it is just as lucrative as anything else, like singing or being in a band or being a dancer.
Right.
So if you have the right intentions going into your drag, you're going to enjoy it a lot more and you're going to do it for a lot longer.
Yeah. No, I can imagine going into it for a passion is important.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So how has your experience been competing for pageant titles? Do you have any advice for others?
Find the pageant that fits you, because I competed in one pageant for 3 years and I enjoyed the brotherhood of it. I loved the people I competed with, but when it came to the system, I felt like some of the things were like very dated. I did not like that I was physically clocked on my body shape at every pageant and points were taken away from me. And I understand when points were taken away from me, if like something doesn't fit me, that is fine.
Right.
But the fact that I have hips that I cannot change because I am naturally born with them is not fair. And when they're like, well, we're looking for a men's shape, I was like, I don't know if you've seen anyone who's not just a like
Skinny.
6 foot like white twink.
Yeah.
But like people have shape.
People have hips. All people have hips.
All people have hips. And so it was just one of those, like, I can't continue to compete in something where I'm putting all my heart and soul into these costumes and wanting to be a good representation for this pageant when simple things like my body shape is the one thing that's hindering me from success, especially when, you know, I don't understand how that matters.
Right.
In pageantry, it's like how it fits you, where it lies, how it looks on you, and it should not be on what they can see of your body shape.
Right. No, I agree. That's an important key. And I think pageants, like you mentioned, are an older practice, but it's important to bring older practices to the 21st century as well. And when you're talking about something like drag that was started by the trans community, it's an important incorporated part of the trans community, and being trans, it should include those trans bodies in mind. So yeah, I think that's really important for pageants all over to kind of look at themselves and do better. Yeah. So what are your future goals and aspirations as a drag artist?
So I have definitely applied for a couple of like drag cons. I think that would be really cool. One, because I've never even been to a Comic-Con, and that's terrible because I am such a nerd.
Yeah.
Deeply so.
Yeah.
And I would also like to perform, now that I realize that there are performances at music festivals, that's such a big part of my like personal life is music festivals. So I'd like to perform at more interesting venues and doing like bigger like theatrical things that I can like invest a lot of time into.
Yeah.
And I think just more travel. I love the fact that my drag gives me the opportunity to be in a bunch of different cities. And so I just want to like kind of continue to see the States. But West Coast is goal. I have not done a show further than Tulsa, but I think Tulsa's technically considered West. So like we started.
You're getting there. Yeah. For sure. Is there anything else you want to plug? Your social media?
Oh, yes, I have those things. It's a requirement, I guess.
Yeah.
So my Instagram is, it's Fyre Storm, but it's Fyre Storm. And then you can also find me on Facebook. It's Fyre, Fyre Storm, STRM, because if I try to put an O in it, Facebook thinks I'm not a real person. And they're not wrong.
They're not
Fyre
wrong.
Storm is an illusion.
It's illusion.
But yes, and I kind of do shows all over. So when it comes to like booking things, if I can drive there, if I can fly there, if I can get a port key, I will be there.
Awesome. That is certainly exciting and cool that your drag brings you to so many places, even rural places too.
And that's kind of my goal. I think half my shows this year for Pride are actually in small towns.
That's great. That's really great. All right. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and for listeners joining us. This has been Teach Chat.